Okay, I think we can get this show on the road. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kwalee Game Masters Summit. A lot of excellent talks have happened so far today, but within this session, we're going to look to get a little bit creative. We're going to be talking about the ad creative lifecycle with some of the best minds, I would say, within the industry, talking about the entire creative process, how to engage and excite users, a bit of testing, some of the new ad formats we see in the space, and how we deal with some of the larger trends within the space, such as VR, AI, all of that cool stuff. So let's kick off. I'm going to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Gavin. I'm the creative head / creative director at Kwalee. So tasked with looking at the various Kwalee games as they go through their various life cycles and producing creative work, whether that be video, interactive experiences, live action trailers, 2D animation, all of that good stuff. I've been in the industry for over 12 years at this point, previously at an ad network and now on the client side. And I am going to be playing the role of the client today with our fellow panelists who I'm going to introduce right now. So first of all, we have Olga from co-founder of PlayToMax. Please introduce yourself, Olga.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Olga. I'm CEO and co-founder of PlayToMax. We are Ukrainian game development studio. We do HTML5 games. And also for the past 8 years, we've been also developing playable ads for mobile games. So we have a pretty long-term expertise in producing interactive creatives. And we also have an experience in gaming itself, in developing games for web.
Awesome. And Olga, also like starting a company, very, very exciting. I know we have people from our emerging track here, people wanting to break into the gaming industry. So your insights as someone who's not only broken in, but built a house, it'll be pretty exciting to hear.
Actually, I think the very important point is to find your people who you want to start the company with. The other things there in the books and videos, you can learn it, but finding the right people is the most important part.
Always great insight. It's all about the people, right? Speaking of more people, Morten from VCCP, please introduce yourself to our guests.
Yeah, I am Morten. I'm a creative director at VCCP and at Faith. So VCCP is a sort of full-service creative agency in London, if you don't know. And in May last year, we started like a sort of side agency, like within the group, basically called Faith, because of the sort of AI developments that are happening. So we felt like we needed to have a point of view on AI. I previously have been in mostly above the line agencies, well, only above the line agencies. And I got my sort of intro to the industry many, many years ago when I was a Flash developer. I came out of my computer science degree and became a Flash developer where I was developing games for clients back then. And then I became a creative and later a creative director. So that's kind of my journey very quickly.
Damn, I'm old enough to remember Flash, but we keep seeing like trends, they come round, right? So maybe Flash will be back. I believe it, you know?
Doubt it.
Okay. And last but by no means least, we have Justin Nield, lead creative solutions from Kaizen.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, I'm Justin. So I guess I represent the ad tech side of things here. Kaizen is a DSP, and I lead the creative solutions at Kaizen. I've been there for a year, and what I've been doing is basically taking creative, different aspects of creative from 0 to 1, trying to figure out analytics, creative templates, all kinds of what sorts of tools advertisers need. Before Kaizen, I worked with Gavin over here for quite a long time at a direct network called VCCP. And yeah, I've been in the space for about 15 years, because before VCCP, Amazon, and then a whole bunch of online gambling before that. And I also started as a Flash designer, making games and ads.
Excellent.
Amazing. I can't believe you've outed me already as someone who worked on the network side, Justin.
Sorry,
Definitely
Gavin.
informs a lot of my opinions on how I see creative trends and definitely how to handle creative strategy. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So considering we're at the Game Masters Summit, I thought maybe start with a little bit of an icebreaker and ask you guys, like, where did your passion for gaming come from? Like, what is your greatest game of all time, and how did it influence you? I'm going to start off. Morten, you can go first, please.
Okay, well, I think I was originally going to say Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I'm kind of showing my age here now a little bit. It's a great game, but actually, the game that I sort of fell in love with the most is Ultima Online, which, if you don't know, is one of the first MMOs. I got it when I was like 19 back in 97, and had a year off. And just the sheer sort of a sense of community. Back then there was very little limitations on what you were allowed to do in MMOs. You can do pretty much anything. So the sort of the freedom, that openness, all that stuff that really got me massively into this space. I also think, like, later on, actually, I worked on what's called a free shot, which is basically a player-run server, and I was a developer there and was able to sort of tinker with the sort of the back end of the game, create all kinds of new cool things for that server. So that's probably the game I would say has had the most influence on me.
That's awesome. Final Fantasy, like 7, I'm old enough to remember it, but it's one game I didn't play. Like, I remember when it came out, was when like PlayStation basically just redefined what gaming was. I think I was more into Metal Gear Solid, which is why, like, nowadays I spend most of my time like trying to hide in a cardboard box. Olga, please tell us about like your goat of gaming.
Yeah, so like I started my gaming with Spyro the Dragon, but I would name it's really hard to say just one favorite game, but I would say that 2 parts of The Last of Us is one of my favorites ever. And if we speak of mobile, I would say Monument Valley, as it's a pure delight of simple and best first user interaction, and in general game design for me.
Awesome. I definitely played some Spyro growing up, like, really beautiful game. And Justin, from your side?
Also going to show some age here, I guess. But I really kind of fell in love. The first games I fell in love with were the Sierra Quest games on PC back in the kind of 286 days, pre-Pentium. And like, yeah, I mean, Guybrush Threepwood, Monkey Island, and Roger Wilco from the Space Quest series. I just like the adventure of it. I love the illusion of choice. Yeah, and then I mean, but it's probably not the game that I spent the most time playing. The game I spent the most time playing was probably Baldur's Gate 3. As I played it, but I actually played it a couple of times.
Gotcha.
And I have to finish everything that I do games wise. So
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so we've prepared some questions for our panel here, but in addition, there is the Q&A option within the Huover. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I've already got a couple of questions in there. So you guys, we're going to have some wildcard questions in here. I've already seen something asking about not being cringe, which I think we all aspire not to be. But really appreciate everyone on the call taking time to have their busy day. I think a lot of people will be wondering, like, what do your days look like? Really interested if you guys could maybe talk to a key project you're currently working on and how it's going, working on or previously worked on. Justin, how about you to start?
Sure. Gav, if you could open up the slides for this one. So I actually, in thinking about this, I thought I'd dip into the archive and pull out something that was one of my more fun, memorable projects that I worked on, where both Gavin and Olga played a role. as we were working together at the time. Sorry, Morten. But yeah, I mean, and also think it kind of touches on a bunch of different things, which is quite interesting. Looking at how to advertise a game that was getting a lot of traction in a publisher, which is really kind of seemed unusual to us at the time. I mean, this would have, I'm not going to say when this was, but yeah, I mean, so Empires and Puzzles, a very specific type of game, getting some good traffic and installs from Grindr, which is a very specific type of app. So we were sort of wondering what are the opportunities and like what aspects of Empires and Puzzles could we and Grindr could we kind of combine to create something that would be fun for the end user and hopefully lead to good performance. And if you go to the next slide, we eventually came to realize that if we look at the characters inside Empires and Puzzles, there are a lot of some very stereotypical handsome knight orcs, even bears, and kinds of characters that might be interesting in a that we could replicate the Grindr experience. So the Grindr experience is on the right, on the left. This is back when we made this, and on the right is the game that the playable and video that we made called Crusher, and we basically sort of did a takeover of the experience. And if you go to the next slide, we'll see what it looks like. I guess it's playing without sound, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm not getting it. It's not coming through from me. It's probably getting filtered out. But you sort of hear the knight going, oh, there's this kind of like green sleeves type of music.
And so this would essentially be Grindr operating as the publisher, and the ads for Empires and Puzzles would be shown. So it's kind of like that, kind of like I think it used to be called kind of like hyper native, right? Like ad content.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean this was a way that we could build an interactive and video experience that would relate. The goal was to relate to, the users of the app are in a specific kind of mindset. They're used to a certain type of language. They're used to engaging in things like as in a specific way, and we just give them the advertisers content in a way that was very relatable. I think it performed relatively well for the client. Obviously, it was a while ago, and the numbers would be irrelevant now, and I don't have them.
Awesome. Olga, how about yourself? Key project you're currently working on or worked on in the past, and maybe an example of how it was in the a game's life cycle, as in like a new title or a game that was looking to kind of improve some of its KPIs.
So basically, as we have two directions of work that we do, we have gaming section, and there we are currently working a lot. Maybe it's gonna relate a little bit for mobile games, porting their experience to web. And specifically, for example, recently launched YouTube games, and a lot of mobile games are trying themselves there right now. So we're helping them with that. As for the playable ads, we've been working with lots of different companies, and I would say maybe with Madbox and Pocket Champs, we've been working for several years, and it's interesting how the approach to the ads is changing slightly, because when it was 2 years ago, it was mainly like the main gameplay of the game and maybe some additional things around it. But now the game has such a big legacy of everything what's going on around it. And currently we are trying to be more creative without misleading ads, because like in general, this is not the trend anymore on the market, thankfully. And this is the thing, how you are trying to basically show the same gameplay each time, but in different perspectives. And it gives a lot of like creation and creativity around the process. This is really great. And I think we'll touch this subject a little bit later on, but in general, the synergy between the client and the vendor is super important here. So you would understand the needs of the client and you can deliver like the creatives in this perspective. And also one of the key projects that we are working on in-house right now, we are developing a dashboard for playables where the clients would be able to tweak a little bit their creatives, do the iterations and export them without additional help from our side. So I would say currently this is also one of the key things we are working on.
Understood. Yeah, I know that the ability to kind of like produce your own iterations of a playable is becoming like a real demand for UA managers. We know how impactful playables can be on a campaign, but obviously they cost a little bit more maybe than video productions. So any ways you can get like further iterations out of a single playable, I think is something that's very, very compelling to a lot of UA managers and creative teams. Awesome. Morten, how about yourself? Can you talk us through a key project?
Yeah, I think like we have some gaming clients, but obviously being like a sort of more above the line agency, we have a lot of more traditional clients which are sort of non-endemic to gaming. And I think one of the things that we try to show is like there is a massive potential within gaming. I don't think that a lot of brands have been very good at unlocking it. And one of those brands that we have, and we've had a long relationship with basically founded them many, many years ago, is O2, which is obviously a mobile phone provider. And they have a long-standing history of promoting music. And I think if you don't mind going to slide, I think it's like 10 in the deck, I can sort of talk a little bit about what we did, right? Because we have to go back in time a little bit. Again, a couple of years, you probably remember the pandemic still, which was not a great time, especially not for bands and for music goers, because obviously everything was shut. O2 has a bunch of different music venues. They were all shut down. And people couldn't go to gigs. It was just not a great time, really. And also, a lot of bands that are coming out in that time, they did not have sort of a space to promote their music, because one thing that's massive when you're releasing a new album, a debut album, for example, is being able to play live concerts. And they couldn't do that. So we had this idea. We had a band which we were helping out called Easy Life, you might have heard of. And we thought, what better way to do this than sort of, now that the venues are closed in the real world, we will open up venues inside of virtual spaces like Fortnite, for example. So that's what we did. If you go on to the next slide, there's a little video playing. I'm just going to talk over it. I've disabled the music. But yeah, the whole point was sort of it was the first sort of gig that was held within creative mode. So creative mode is a space within Fortnite. It used to be called creative mode, but within Fortnite where you can build kind of different things. And back then it was quite limited what you could do. So we created a sort of experience that matched the album. So the whole point was about releasing this album. There was a bunch of different songs on the album. So we created like an area of the map for each song that matched the song. We then shot the band in different situations that matched the sort of ideas we had for the different parts of the game, and then we sort of put it all together. And the result was like actually a really good experience. People literally fell in love with it, which is something that you're always hoping, but you never really know. If you move on to the next slide, I think we've got a few stats just really quickly. So yeah. 10.8 million unique players, which is pretty amazing for a branded experience, and even better, like 20 minutes of average dwell time, which, you know, if you times those numbers up, that's what, like 200 million minutes. That's 400 million TV ads. So it was quite a huge scale, and it just goes to show how you can get, if you sort of hit the right nerve and you work with the right people, you can get some amazing results. We go to the next slide. We had obviously some collectibles that we worked with Epic very closely, and this was some of the first collectibles they gave for brands. So a spray in game, also a unique track that you could only be unlocked in game. Move on to the next slide. Got plenty of PR, including the BBC. It did quite well for O2, and we use this as a sort of a project to say, well, actually, gaming is an amazing opportunity for brands if they do it right. And I think for me personally, this was a lot of fun. I mean, this was 6 months of my life that I look back on very, very fondly. Especially, I think the response from the gaming audience, the fact that people actually loved it. I was like, oh, I made something that people really love. That sort of blew my mind a little bit, because that's kind of rare within advertising, where you create ads mostly. So it was a really interesting experience for us, working with creators. All the build was done by creators. These days there's UEFN, you should probably know, where you can do pretty much anything because you've got Unreal Engine basically built into Fortnite. But back then it was a lot of hacking going on basically in automated work, and we had to work very closely with Epic Games as well. So it was a really fun project.
That is awesome, really interesting, especially kind of coming from the project that Justin admits he worked on a while ago, when it was about getting kind of like adverts that fit the publisher, to then being in the situation where you're like within like what is essentially like a metaverse in itself, and like the ad content being content, it's music, it's within gaming. That's really, really interesting. It's obviously these meta worlds is a very a hot button topic at the moment, as is the subject of AI. So I'm really interested with the group how AI has impacted your work or your creative practice. Who would like to jump in first?
I guess I can. I mean, obviously, we created Faith, which is specifically to target this, right? Because I think everyone started jumping in, and we saw a lot of people, a lot of creatives were already using Midjourney to generate different concepts and all these other things. So we see a lot of that happening pretty early on, like concepting, also specialist tools, right? There's tons of specialist tools that can help you, like background removal or noise removal from sound if you have a sound sample which is not very good. Lots of different things. I think what we're seeing more now is you've got like two camps that we're using, like the big name like OpenAI and Midjourney, those guys, which is basically like you can do amazing things with it, but it's quite limiting in terms of what the output is, which makes it really hard to use in production. And then on the other side, we've got the open source bit, like Stable Diffusion, some of the open source language models, where you've got a lot more control. And those ones we can actually see that we can create production assets, or we can sort of create characters that is reproducible and other things. So, that's mainly sort of where we are using it and trying to sort of create products for clients as well, which we can talk a little bit about later on. Understood.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how we use in our creative practice, sort of flipping the coin a little bit, I guess there's the generative AI is something that's, very useful. Everybody we all know what that is. We can generate whatever we want. But actually, if you turn it around and you use similar tools to describe things, you can get some really interesting data. So something that I found is quite useful is to look at, analyze creative and pull out attributes from that creative, and then tie those attributes to performance data, and work out what are the elements inside your creative that are going to that you should put in your next creative brief, right? So what sort of mood should the talking heads, what should we include a cat, those kinds of little things. And there's some interesting tools for that. So I mean, like Allison is a useful tool for create that aims to do that sort of thing. But I'd quite like to see where that's going. I haven't found anything that I think is the perfect tool for that, but I quite like the idea of, I mean, we've also in the past trained specific models to look for specific attributes that we think are key levers in creative, and then we can tie that to performance data. But yeah, it's not
the utilization of like AI for creative analysis is something that's particularly interesting. I know from Kwalee, but a lot of other gaming studios, when it comes to like what creative is performing. Like you're obviously dealing with multiple creatives that are being advertised across multiple different networks with multiple different data points. Getting kind of like a real read on kind of what are the actual elements that are across multiple creatives, being able to tag them through AI systems is definitely something super interesting. I also find that I don't know if you guys would agree with this. It's kind of like there's a lot of misconceptions about what you can do with AI. Like very often it'd be like, oh, can you not just use AI to do something? Can you just do something with AI? They're like, well, what would you like me to do with AI? What do you guys think are kind of like the common misconceptions around like AI within our industry?
Yeah, I guess, it's like with the robotic vacuum cleaners, they can do some specific amount of work, but you still have to do lots of other cleaning stuff yourself. And the thing is that the AI is a super helpful and effective tool that you can use, but there should be an operator who uses it, basically. And in our production, what we do, how we utilize AI, mostly it's like the helpers, the Git Copilot, Photoshop, Midjourney, and so on. But in general, there has to be like some higher idea of creativity that someone has to use it. So the misconception that you've talked about, that just do it with AI, it just doesn't work like that yet, at least.
Yeah, I find it similar. I mean, we've tend to find with both the clients, but also sometimes like internally in the industry, like this first thing is like, oh, you can do anything, you can replace anything with AI. Oh my God. And then like 5 minutes later, people start using it. It's like, oh, I can't do anything with AI. Those are the sort of like the two things that I see a lot. And actually, obviously, it's somewhere in between, right? Because if you put into Midjourney a very specific thing you're looking for, you're never going to get what you're looking for straight out of it. You need to put into Photoshop, or like I mentioned some open source tools earlier, like Stable Diffusion has a lot of control software, ControlNet, IP Adapter, all these other things that you can help to really make much more specific content that comes out of the AI models, which you can then put into Photoshop. So the idea that it's either replaces everything or replaces nothing are obviously both wrong, and it's usually somewhere in between. And exactly like Olga is saying, like it's very much come down to who's using it, really.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I heard a very good joke from like a creative designer. This was when like AI was really stepping up over the past couple of years, and they were like, I don't know why everyone's so worried about like their jobs in the light of the rise of AI. In order for it to work, the client needs to know what they want. They never know what they want.
Yeah. Garbage in, garbage out.
It's true.
Exactly.
True.
As always the case with machine tools.
Pretty much with anything, I think. Like, I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, everyone's probably seen Sora released Thursday, and obviously, it's amazing, right? Because it's sort of the sort of leap over Pika Labs and some of the other ones that we've been using are insane. But again, I'm pretty sure once we get hands up, it will have the same issues that Midjourney has, for example, in terms of it'll probably do something which looks great, but it's not what I'm looking for.
But things also tend to look the same. I mean, absolutely everyone, at least every creative person in our industry, already knows how to spot an AI image. This is a problem, because if people get used to, if there's something that's always there that makes us know that it's not doesn't have a human touch, then we're going to end up creating loads and loads of rubbish, and and that rubbish will feed the next round of machines, and it becomes a sort of echo chamber of at some point there needs to be new thought and new stylistic expression that goes back into it. I feel like we're at some point in the near future we'll have a digital arts and crafts movement.
Well,
like,
so going back to kind of like the
no, like I mean, the Industrial Revolution sparked like created the arts and crafts movement, right? And I think that these sorts of tools will produce masses and masses and masses of very obvious stuff. But and in an attention economy, lots and lots of, we can just push loads of stuff out there, serve it to people with algorithms, keep them in the loop in the attention, but we'll just become blind to it. And what I think we need to move towards is trying to create inspiration instead of just trying to keep the attention. And it's going to be harder and harder to create inspiration if everything looks the same.
I just think it'll just increase competition, really, right? Because in the end, if you look at all the content that gets produced, right, there's like top 10% of it that's good. There's most content is not that good, right? To be honest. And I think like by giving making these tools available to anyone, where it's become a lot more democratized, I think being able to sort of create something which is truly outstanding with the tools is just going to become harder and harder. So I think the competition is just going to ramp up, and really it'll become much more about how good are you at using the tools, and not just leaving it to, adding an extra like ultra realistic to your prompt or whatever it might be. That it goes beyond that. I think I see a lot of people who are technically amazing at doing stuff with Stable Diffusion, for example, but the sort of what I would, as a creative director, call the artistic value of it, maybe not so much. And I think once we get more people who are more traditionally creative people, when they learn to use the tools in the way that they actually already can be used now, we're going to see a whole different type of content being generated by AI.
Yeah, definitely. I would
crafts movement, because you'll have actual artists using the tools.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, that's what we try to say to people. It's like, okay, and that's why we are creating our own tools as well, and we're using we're doing it as creatives. And I kind of say, like, okay, if engineers are amazing at doing what they do, but if you're going to make the next tool that's going to create amazing creative work, do you want creatives to make those tools, or do you want engineers to make them? Or, I mean, maybe it's together, but you need creatives involved in that process, right? Because otherwise they're just going to not necessarily do what we want them to do.
Exactly. And ultimately, I think it is a tool that can be utilized, and one of the real benefits is the fact that you can get a lot more output with a smaller team. And it's actually, this really relates to a question that's got a couple of upvotes here that I wanted to put to you guys. So this is very much from this perspective of a small publisher, a small developer. What advice, top tips would you give to small publishers / developers that have their own in-house creative team? So, okay, I think we're filling up again. We were just saying it's the AI, like it's turning against us. They don't want the secrets of how you like optimize a small creative team out there into the world. But yeah, let's jump back into that question. So it was advice you would give to smaller studios, developers that have like their own in-house team. How would you best utilize them?
The creative team, right? I would say, like, first of all, be honest with your user. Don't tend to think that they are too stupid to understand what you're doing to them, because it will backfire on you, definitely. So just be true, be honest, utilize the best features of your game in the creative process, but at the same time, always remember about first time user interaction. It's user experience. So it's the key feature for playables, for example, I would say is the first time user experience, because as clear as the ad and the creative would be, the better quality audience you would get, because otherwise people would just leave it without understanding what the creative wants from them, what's the CTA for them. Understood.
From my side, speaking from the the gaming side, I always think it's important, especially like with a new title, establishing that baseline for the game. So that's really kind of like covering the experience of the game, like talking about that for first time user experience. That really should be like your baseline. And then you can start experimenting away from that. Something that we look at is basically trying to measure how far away from like the core gaming experience we want to go. And that can go in multiple different directions. That could be kind of like bringing in live action elements, focusing on one key element of the game and kind of almost abstracting out from that. In addition to like a continuous focus on creative testing, it needs to be like an ongoing process. You're basically building out your best practice. Justin, Morten, like anything from your guys' side in your experience of working with gaming companies, what advice you would give?
I mean, the focus on creative strategy. Craft is just cheaper and easier these days. So you can, as we've just been talking about, you can produce video easier and easier. But if you really focus on collecting data and building strong, solid creative briefs based off of what's been performing for you, for your competitors, trends, and then looking at where you can get some ML analysis in. Yeah, I really think focusing on creative strategy is probably where you'll get the biggest bang for your buck, because craft is cheap. And then the other thing is, if we're talking about ads, if you've got a big enough ad budget, lean on your ad networks and get them to make stuff for you. That's always worked well for advertisers, and when I've been on the other side of this conversation.
Yeah, I think I agree. Also, like some of the brands that we work with on the game side, some of them are like bigger publishers, like really big ones. And I think like just looking at the sort of gaming landscape as it is today, the honesty is quite important, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of sort of oversold titles where what you see is has nothing to do with what you get. So I think it's really important not to, and it might sound a bit obvious, but it's very important not to sort of come out of touch with the people who are actually going to be playing your game. That's really, really important. Make sure, and that comes with to Justin's point about the sort of strategic stuff up front. Make sure that you really know your audience and how to talk to them, because otherwise, it's just not going to go down well. And yeah, we've seen that many times already.
Makes sense. I would also say something that's very important, I think sometimes gets left out, is making sure your creative team is like fully integrated with the rest of the company. I'm talking about like the game dev team when it comes to new features that are coming out, let's say some seasonal events. Getting the creative team involved in that process early means that they can start planning to essentially best showcase it. I know this is something that has been talked about a while in the industry, like the utilization of creative UA for testing game features is very, very important. And then you're really maximizing your creative team in both producing content for acquiring users, but then also understanding how you kind of like build out your game in its life cycle.
And if I can add to that, that actually relates to if you're working with a vendor as well. They cannot be as much integrated into your production process, but at least try to give them some information about your audience, about your plans, and like the overview of your product, so it would be easier for them to create the playables or videos or whatever for you.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, make sure you test everything properly. And make sure you know what metric you're trying to test for, that you have a real clear hypothesis, and that you're not just putting stuff out there, letting algorithms figure it out and then seeing what wins, because you don't really learn if you do that. You just basically have a hunch of what might have worked. But if you test clear hypotheses and you make sure that everything is statistically significant, then you can actually learn real things.
Great. Got another question here from the chat. How do you guys stay updated on the latest trends for your ads? Basically, how do you not be cringe?
I think like spending a sort of embarrassing amount of time in the community, I think, is the best way that I find to do it. Like I sort of watch a lot of streamers, a lot of YouTubers and play people in their environment, just to sort of, for me to understand, because I would fairly easy fall out of coolness if I didn't. Like, I think that's really important to sort of try and consume some of the same media that they do, and being in the communities yourself on your own time. I mean, I don't advocate for people just working all the time, but if you're in the industry and you are sort of hobbies overlap with what you do for work, you're a bit lucky in that sense, because you sort of automatically, in some ways, sort of at least stay in touch a little bit with the community. I think that's really important.
I think that's super important. It's almost like there's a new global language that's constantly evolving every single day, what people find like amusing, what they want to share. Like trying to stay like plugged into that can be challenging, but it's something that's like, I think as anyone working in the creative space, you got to try and do it. Well, Olga, Justin, what about you guys? How do you guys stay so hip?
Yeah, the community in general, the world gaming community is one thing, and also the industry community is the other thing. The events like this, for example, it gives you a lot of overview and perspective what's going on, like in your specific area, in your specific industry, and it's really important as well to always constantly communicate with your both clients, friends, enemies, and I don't know, like everyone. You should understand what's going on the market.
I don't try and stay on top of trends. I follow data and look at what's performing, and I have good sources for that. There's quite a lot of it these days. You know, all of your data.ai and your mobile action sensor tower, these guys have got great, that can give you a great indication of what will perform for you. And then also obviously being inside a DSP, I get to see what's performing, so I can just go and look at, and that's how I think it's very hard to do zero level problem solving, and it's much easier to go from 1 to 2 than it is to go from 0 to 1. So I try and go from 1 to 2 in this aspect.
No, I definitely would say like following the data has got to be key there. In addition to that, like I feel like when you're trying to keep up with trends, you kind of run the risk of blending in. And with advertising, like really what you want to do is stand out. It's something that we discuss internally, is kind of like that almost like gut reaction to something, whether it's like shock or wow, that is hilarious, or even just confusion. The team at Kwalee, especially our younger members of the team, sometimes I feel like they are speaking a completely different language, a bit different visual language for me, but I always find it arresting. But my response is usually, wait, what does this mean? So kind of like if you can cause that disruption with your ad content, with your creative, I think you're on a really good spot. Guys, we're actually like coming.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that is really, I mean, the trend following is really, really an important point, I think, because that, I mean, not just in this space, but we've seen that in advertising in general, like people just literally just, you know, their brand gets completely lost because they're just doing what all the other people are doing. And there's, you know, that's not good for your brand value, right? Because people don't recognize you're just another person who did the whatever dance or the frothy thing or whatever it is. Like, you know, you might get a few views on that, but that doesn't work in the long term. You're not building any brand career. So I think it's very important not just to follow trends for the sake of it. I very much agree with that.
I definitely agree. Like standing out in a space is very important. I will note that we're coming to the end of our session. So we obviously open this up to the emerging track as well. So in the spirit of talking about how you stand out, maybe for people who are watching this, who are interested in a career on the creative side, whether that be in gaming or on the agency side, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to someone? I'm happy to go first because I think I spoke about this recently, and actually relates back to tools. Never try and learn a tool, just try and make something. A tool is what you use to make a piece of creative. So if someone says to me, like, I want to learn how to do 3D modeling, it's like, well, what are you going to make? Like, just try and make something and use the tools that come come to mind, and then always be willing to experiment. Like there's so many ways you can approach like creative projects. And I think if you're on the younger side and wanting to break in the industry, the more access to different tools you can make, but always have an idea of like, what am I trying to accomplish here? What am I trying to create? Because I think that's kind of one of the key parts of being a creative.
I'd say I like the idea of focusing on being good enough and not being perfect. You know, creative people can fall into a trap of being perfectionists, and the way you make an awesome masterpiece of a painting is you paint 400 shit paintings, sorry, and then eventually something good comes out. And I think that you've just got to do the work, and like Gavin says, don't focus on the tools, but just focus on getting something good enough and putting it out there, and then do the next thing, and it'll be better.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's super important to just have a sort of learning mentality, right? Sort of like, because I think like a lot of when I see creatives coming up, I love to see a creative who is like, he's standing in front of a problem, whether it's a tools problem or whatever, and sort of feels back to what you were saying, Gavin. But they just like, okay, I don't know how to edit because I never learned it before, but now I need to, maybe I thought that would be really good to have a little film about this or whatever. So I'm just going to try and do that. Or, you know, I play around a little bit in Blender or Unreal Engine or whatever. Don't be afraid to learn new things all the time. And I think that's super important for having longevity in the creative industry, because especially now everything's changing so quickly. New tools are coming out all the time. So instead of just bogging down with the one tool, make sure that you're always sort of learning. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and same not only with the tools, but also like with the areas of creativity. Like if you're, for example, an artist, you should also understand what other people in your process are doing. And maybe not be a perfectionist, not try to like invent a new profession for yourself, but just like open the, I don't know, audio tool and understand how it works. So when you come to the audio designer, you would tell him in his language what you want him to achieve, and like try to pick up just little tips and tricks from different areas, so you would in general understand the whole creativity process, not just your specific spot.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, just say yes to everything, really, and then I would just say, and then even if you don't know how you're going to get there, just say yes to anything and then figure it out afterwards, right? Because especially if you're young, people don't expect you to be able to know everything, right? But often you are looking for a mentality, right? You're looking for someone who's like, okay, no, I don't know how to do it, I can find out, right? And I think, you know, when you're starting out, that's really, really important, because people who have been in the industry for a long time really pick up on that and they really value that, I think.
True.
Great advice all around. Well, guys, we're at time here. Thank you for joining us today. Also, thank you for the questions put in. I'm sorry we weren't able to go through all of them. I'm sure some of these guys will hang around in the chat if you want to ask them some more, and I will do the same. So yeah, really appreciate your time today, guys. And looking forward to the next session. Cheers.
Thank you.
Ciao, guys.
Thank you. Cheers,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.